My name is Mark Sullivan. I'm 41 years old, and I live in Denver, Colorado. Well, I used to live there with my family. Now I'm not even sure what home means anymore. It was a Tuesday morning in October when I found the envelope, the kind of crisp autumn morning that makes you grateful to live in Colorado. With the Rocky Mountains painted gold by the sunrise, and that thin, clean air that fills your lungs like hope itself. I had just gotten back from my morning jog around Washington Park. Sarah's coffee mug was still sitting in the sink, lipstick mark on the rim like always. Emma's cereal bowl too, with those little cartoon characters she loved so much smiling up at me from the bottom. Normal. Everything looked so goddamn normal. To continue hearing this beautiful and special story, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Write your name and the city you're watching from so I can include a special greeting for you in a future story. That's when I saw it, a white envelope on the kitchen table with my name written in Sarah's careful handwriting. Mark. Just Mark. Not honey or babe like she used to write on my lunch notes. Just my name, cold and formal like I was a stranger. I remember standing there for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds, staring at that envelope. The kitchen smelled like Emma's strawberry Pop-Tarts and Sarah's vanilla perfume, the same smells that had greeted me every morning for the past 12 years. But something was different. Something was wrong. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were divorce papers, already signed, her signature neat and decisive at the bottom of page after page of legal jargon that basically said our marriage was over. No discussion, no counseling, no second chances, just over. I sat down hard in the chair where I'd eaten thousands of meals, where Emma had done her homework while I helped her with math problems, where Sarah and I used to plan our weekends and dream about the future. The same chair where I was now reading about the end of everything I thought I knew. The house felt different after that morning, like someone had sucked all the air out of it. Sarah was gone. She'd packed her things while I was at work the day before. How had I missed that? Emma was at her sister's house in Boulder, supposedly for a sleepover that had now stretched into its third day. I called Sarah's phone, voicemail. I called again, voicemail. I sent text that showed as delivered but never. It was like she had erased me from existence with the same efficiency she used to organize our kitchen pantry. For 3 days I walked through that house like a ghost haunting his own life. I'd catch myself setting 2 coffee cups in the morning, then stare at the extra one like it was evidence of my own stupidity. I'd start to call upstairs to ask Sarah something, then remember that upstairs was just empty rooms and the echo of my own voice. The worst part wasn't the silence. It was the way everything looked exactly the same but felt completely different. Our wedding photo still sat on the mantel, but now it looked like a museum piece. Emma's drawings were still stuck to the refrigerator, with magnets we'd collected from family vacations, but they felt like artifacts from someone else's life. I kept replaying our last conversation, trying to figure out what I'd missed. It had been about Emma's soccer practice schedule. Mundane. Normal. Sarah had even kissed my cheek when I left for work that morning. How do you kiss someone goodbye when you've already decided to divorce them? That's when I realized I didn't know my wife at all. Or maybe I'd stopped paying attention somewhere along the way. Maybe we'd both stopped paying attention to each other. And this was the price. On Friday, I came home to find a real estate agent's car in my driveway. A woman in a sharp suit was walking around my backyard with a clipboard, taking. I stood at the kitchen window watching her examine the deck I'd built with my own hands 3 summers ago. The garden beds where Sarah and I had planted roses together. The swing set where Emma had learned to pump her legs and fly toward the clouds. "Excuse me," I called out as I walked out. "Can I help you?" She turned with a practiced smile. "Oh, you must be the husband. I'm Jennifer Walsh from Coldwell Banker. Your wife hired me to list the property. Beautiful home. We should have no trouble moving it quickly in this market." The words hit me like a physical blow. Moving it quickly. Like our home was just another commodity. Like the place where I'd carried Sarah over the threshold as newlyweds, where we'd brought Emma home from the hospital, where we'd celebrated birthdays and Christmases, and ordinary Tuesday nights was just something to be liquidated. "I'm sorry," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "There must be some mistake. I haven't agreed to sell the house." Jennifer's smile faltered slightly. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through something. "Well, according to my contract, Sarah Sullivan has power of attorney for all real estate decisions. Everything appears to be in order." Power of attorney. The words rang in my ears as she continued talking about market comparisons and staging recommendations. When had Sarah gotten power of attorney? How had I signed something like that without remembering? Then it hit me. 2 years ago, when we'd updated our wills after Emma was born, we'd signed a bunch of documents together, and I'd trusted Sarah to handle the details. I'd been more focused on getting back to work, on providing for our family. I'd signed whatever she put in front of me, because I trusted her completely. That trust was now being used to sell our home out from under me. I finally reached Sarah on Saturday. She answered on the first ring, like she'd been expecting my call. Mark. Her voice was calm, almost businesslike. Sarah, we need to talk about the divorce papers, about the house, about Emma, about everything. There was a long pause. I could hear traffic in the background, which meant she wasn't at her sister's house like I'd assumed. Where was she staying? There's nothing to talk about, she said finally. I've made my decision. Your decision? What about our decision? What about our marriage, our family? Mark, she sighed. And for a moment I heard a crack in her armor. You checked out years ago. You just haven't noticed. The accusation stung because part of me wondered if it was true. Had I checked out? I worked hard. Sure, I wanted to provide for my family. I wanted to give Emma everything I never had as a kid. But checked out? That's not fair, I said. I've been here. I've been working my ass off for this family. Working, yes. But here? Really here? When was the last time you asked me how I was feeling? When was the last time we had a real conversation that wasn't about Emma's schedule, or the mortgage payment, or what was wrong with the garage door? I opened my mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come, because she was right. When was the last time we'd talked about dreams, about feelings, about anything that mattered? So you're selling our house, I said instead. I'm moving on, Mark. I have to. I'm 38 years old and I feel like I'm disappearing. Emma will be fine. Kids are resilient. And you'll figure it out. You always do. Then she said something that will haunt me forever. I loved you so much that I lost myself completely. And I can't do that anymore. The line went dead. That night I did something I'd never done before. I went through Sarah's thing. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I needed to understand who she'd become while I wasn't paying attention. In her nightstand drawer, underneath old receipts and Emma's school photos, I found a journal. I almost didn't open it, even in my anger and confusion. It felt like a violation, but I needed answers. The first entry was from 3 years ago. Sarah's handwriting, but younger somehow, more hopeful. Mark worked late again tonight. Emma asked where Daddy was during dinner. I told her he was working hard for us. But sometimes I wonder if he's working hard to avoid. I miss talking to him, really talking, not just logistics and schedules, but dreams and fears and the stuff that matters. I flipped through months of entries, each one a little sadder than the last. Sarah writing about feeling lonely in her own marriage, about watching me come home exhausted and distant, about wanting to tell me she was thinking of going back to school, but never finding the right moment, about Emma asking why mommy looked sad all the time. The worst entry was from 6 months ago. I tried to talk to Mark about us tonight, about how we're just roommates now. He said he was too tired and maybe we could talk tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. I'm starting to think he'd be relieved if I just disappeared. Maybe we all would be better off. I closed the journal and sat on our bed in the dark. Our bed, where we used to stay up talking until 2 a.m. when we were dating, where we'd made love and made plans, and made promises to always be there for each other. When had it become just a place where two strangers slept side by side? The truth was painful, because it was true. I had checked out, not intentionally, but gradually. Work had become my excuse for everything. Emma's needs had become our only common ground. We'd stopped being husband and wife, and become business partners running the corporation of our family. The next morning, I called my old college roommate Dave Martinez. Dave was a lawyer now, specializing in real estate and family law. We'd stayed in touch over the years, mostly through Christmas cards, and the occasional beer when he was in town. Mark, good to hear from you, man. How's Sarah? How's the little one? I told him everything. The divorce papers, the house sale, the power of attorney. Dave listened without interrupting, and I could hear him taking notes. Okay, he said, when I finished. First question, do you want to save your marriage or protect your assets? I thought about Sarah's journal entries, about the woman who felt like she was disappearing. I want to save my marriage, I said, but I don't think that's possible anymore. Then we focus on damage control. The good news is that power of attorney has limits. She can't sell marital property without your consent, regardless of what that document says. The bad news is that fighting this is going to get ugly fast. How ugly? Depositions. Financial discovery. Emma might get pulled into it. Sarah's going to see this as you trying to trap her in a marriage she wants out of. It could destroy any chance of an amicable divorce. I stared out my office window at downtown Denver. The mountains looked cold and distant in the November light. What would you do, Dave? Honestly, I'd probably let her go. Cut your losses, negotiate a fair settlement, and focus on being the best co-parent you can be. But something in me rebelled against that advice. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was stubbornness. Or maybe it was the realization that I'd spent years letting life happen to me instead of actively participating in it. I'm not letting her sell this house, I said. Not like this. Not without a fight. Dave was quiet for a moment. Okay. But you need to understand what you're starting here. Once we file the restraining order against the sale, there's no going back. You're choosing to fight. Then I'm choosing to fight. Dave worked fast. By Tuesday, we had an injunction against the sale of the house. By Wednesday, Sarah's lawyer was calling my lawyer. By Thursday, I was sitting across from Sarah in a conference room that smelled like stale coffee and disappointment. She looked different. Thinner. There were circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. But there was also something else, a determination I hadn't seen in years. You can't keep me prisoner in this marriage, Mark, she said, before anyone else could speak. I'm not trying to keep you prisoner. I'm trying to protect what we built together. What we built, her voice rose slightly. I built that house too. I picked out every light fixture, every cabinet handle, every paint color. I planted that garden. I made that house a home while you were working 60-hour weeks. She was right, of course. Sarah had made our house beautiful. She'd turned it from a collection of rooms into a real home. But that's exactly why I couldn't let her sell it. So sell it then, I said quietly. But let's do it together. Let's make these decisions as a family, even if we're not going to be a family much longer. Sarah's lawyer leaned forward. Mr. Sullivan, my client wants a clean break. The longer this drags out, the more painful it becomes for everyone, especially your daughter. Emma, through all of this legal maneuvering and emotional warfare, I'd almost forgotten that we had a 7-year-old daughter who was probably confused and scared and wondering why Daddy and Mommy weren't living in the same house anymore. Where is Emma? I asked Sarah. She's staying with my sister until we figure this out. She should be home. With one of us. With both of us. For the first time since this whole nightmare started. Sarah's composure cracked. Tears filled her eyes. She keeps asking when you're coming to get her. She doesn't understand why Mommy and Daddy can't just fix this. The room went quiet. Even the lawyers seemed to recognize that we'd moved beyond legal strategy into something more fundamental. This wasn't just about property division or custody arrangement. This was about a little girl who loved both her parents and couldn't understand why love wasn't enough to keep a family together. Bring her home, I said. Please, let's at least do this part right. Emma came home on Friday afternoon. I was waiting on the front porch when Sarah's car pulled into the driveway. My daughter bounded out of the back seat like a golden retriever who'd been separated from her pack, all 7 years of her launching into my arms with enough force to knock me backward. Daddy, I missed you so much. Aunt Julie doesn't know how to make pancakes the right way, and she doesn't have any good movies, and her house smells like cats. I buried my face in her hair, breathing in that uniquely Emma smell of strawberry shampoo, and childhood, and unconditional love. I missed you too, baby girl. So much. Sarah watched from the car for a moment, before getting out. She'd packed Emma's things in the same purple suitcase we'd bought for our trip to Disneyland 2 years ago. When had that trip become a memory instead of a promise of more adventures to come? Can we all watch a movie tonight? Emma asked, looking back and forth between us. Like we used to? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah and I looked at each other over Emma's head, and for a moment I saw past the anger and hurt to the woman I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. The woman who used to steal French fries off my plate and leave little notes in my lunchbox and dance in the kitchen while making dinner. Sure, sweetheart, Sarah said finally. One movie night. We ended up on the couch together, Emma between us, watching Moana for what felt like the 100th time. But it was different this time. Every song, every scene felt loaded with meaning. When Moana sang about going beyond the reef, about finding her own way, I felt Sarah shift beside me. When Maui sang about being stuck in the middle of nowhere, I wondered if that's how I'd felt for the past few years without realizing it. Emma fell asleep during the credits, her head on Sarah's lap, her feet stretched across mine. We sat there in the dark, listening to our daughter's soft breathing, neither of us wanting to move and break the spell. "She's going to be okay," Sarah whispered. "Are we going to be okay?" Sarah was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. "I don't know," she said finally. "I really don't know," but the way she said it wasn't angry or dismissive. It was honest. And somehow that honesty felt like the first real conversation we'd had in months. The mediation session was scheduled for the following Monday. Over the weekend, Sarah stayed in the guest room, while Emma slept in her own bed for the first time in 2 weeks. We moved around each other carefully, like dancers who'd forgotten the choreography but were trying not to step on each other's feet. Saturday morning, I made my famous pancakes, the ones Aunt Julie apparently couldn't master. Emma chattered about school and her friends and her soccer team, while Sarah and I passed the syrup and butter in careful politeness. It felt like playing house, except the house was real, and the marriage was ending. After Emma went outside to play, Sarah and I cleaned the dishes together. Another old dance, though we'd modified it over the years. She washed, I dried. She put away, I wiped down. Efficient and practiced, and completely hollow. "I need you to know something," Sarah said as she handed me the last plate. "This isn't about another man. I know that's what you're probably thinking. But it's not. I hadn't been thinking that, actually." Sarah wasn't the type for a she was too honest, too direct. If she wanted to be with someone else, she'd tell me. "I know," I said. "And it's not about the money either. I don't want to take everything you've worked for. I want to feel like myself again." I set the plate in the cabinet and turned to face her. Really face her. Maybe for the first time in years. She looked older than 30, tired, but there was also something peaceful about her expression. Like she'd made a difficult decision and was relieved to finally be moving forward. "I'm sorry," I said. "For what?" "For letting you disappear, for not noticing that you were drowning, for making you feel like you had to choose between being married to me and being yourself." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Mark, I'm not saying this to try to save our marriage. I think it's probably too late for that. I'm saying it because it's true, and because you deserve to hear it." She wiped her eyes with the dish towel. "You weren't the only one who stopped trying. I could have fought harder. I could have made you listen instead of just writing in my journal and hoping you'd magically figure out what I needed." We stood there in our kitchen, surrounded by the ghosts of 1,000 other conversations we should have had. The sunlight streaming through the windows. Emma had finger-painted last spring. Made everything look soft and forgiving. "So what now?" I asked. "Now we figure out how to be the best parents we can be to Emma, and how to be friends if that's possible." Friend. It wasn't what I'd hoped for when I married her, but it was more than I'd feared when I found those divorce papers. The mediation went smoother than anyone expected. Sarah and I had already done the hard work over pancakes and dish soap. The lawyers worked out the details, shared custody of Emma, a fair division of assets, and yes, the sale of the house with proceeds split equally. I didn't fight it this time, not because I'd given up, but because I'd finally understood what Sarah had been trying to tell me. Home isn't a building. It's not the swing I hung in the backyard, or the deck I built with my own hands. Home is where your family is, even if that family looks different than you expected. Emma would have 2 homes now, a weekend dad and a weekday mom, and holidays negotiated through lawyers. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life we had. The surprising thing was what happened after. Once the pressure was off, once Sarah knew she was free to go, she didn't seem in such a hurry to leave. She found an apartment in our neighborhood so Emma could stay in the same school district. She started taking evening classes at the community college, something about graphic design that I'd never known she was interested in. And I started paying attention, really paying attention, to Emma's stories about school, To the way Sarah's face lit up when she talked about her classes, to the small daily rhythms that make up a life. We sold the house in March. The new owners were a young couple with a baby on the way, and they promised to take good care of Emma's garden and the swing in the backyard. I moved into a condo downtown with a view of the mountains. Sarah moved into her apartment near Emma's school. Emma moved between us like a small ambassador of hope. 6 months later, I got a text from Sarah. A photo of a design she'd created for her final project. A logo for a fictional company that helped families transition through difficult times. It was beautiful, elegant, full of hope. "Congratulations," I texted back. "I'm proud of you." "Thank you," she replied, "for letting me go," but that wasn't quite right. I hadn't let her go. I'd learned to love her differently. To love her as the mother of my daughter, and the woman who'd helped shape the best years of my life, and the friend who knew me better than anyone else in the world. The divorce papers that started this whole story weren't the end of my marriage. They were the beginning of something else, something harder and messier and more honest than what we'd had before. Emma still has two parents who love her. Sarah still has someone who will always care about her happiness. And I have a second chance to be the kind of man who pays attention, who shows up, who doesn't take love for granted. The house sold, but the family evolved. And sometimes evolution is the most beautiful kind of change there is.